Contemporary Art. They've been a wonderful partner for this symposium. They've made all sorts of things possible that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. This afternoon at 2:30, we have a panel that will be discussing poems and portraits. You can see that live stream. And tomorrow, Tyler Chadwick, a scholar whose dissertation explores the work of Alex Caldiero, will be our last event. Who is this dancing poet who will perform for us today? Alex Caldiero addresses the question in a poem called Islander. Born on the island of Sicily, raised on the island of Manhattan, growing old on the island of Utah, all my life surrounded by water. Arriving in Brooklyn when he was 9 years old, Alessandro Alex Caldiero learned English and unlearned Sicilian in a series of Catholic schools. In high school, his girlfriend, who was attending Brooklyn Polytechnic University, invited him to a poetry reading at the university. There, he met Bob Heman, an editor of the campus literary magazine Counterweight, and became part of the literary scene centered around the publication. Heman eventually printed Caldiero's first published poem, Monad, as a broadside. If you come see this extraordinary exhibition at the Utah Museum of Contemporary Art, you'll see that 3 versions of that in a striking pose. If you are coming to the exhibition, you'll need to make reservations. They're trying to keep us safe. That's why Alex and I are wearing masks right now. When I'm done with the introduction and will be more than 10 feet away, Alex will remove his mask for the performance. Since the Monad broadside, Alex's work has appeared often in Heman's Clown War. Caldiero's youthful fascination with the arts led him not to college, but to a multi-year apprenticeship with Michael Dukakis, a New York sculptor who was a close friend of E.E. Cummings and Ezra Pound. Caldiero's book, Sono Suono, published by Eliot Press, is a multi-language book about Sicily and about his life as an emigrant and an immigrant. The book is rich with anecdotes like the one that begins, "Because I grew up in America, I can only ever be part islander. As proof of this, let me recount the incident of my swollen testicles." At a reading performance of his own work in Brooklyn, the still young Caldiero met polyartist Richard Kostelanetz. Kostelanetz was impressed and printed Caldiero's work Foam and Sand in his sound text. Here is a scroll of this Foam and Sand work. He also included Caldiero in his dictionary of the avant-gardes, writing that, quote, "Sicilian-born, New York-reared Caldiero has created distinguished sound poetry and performance, as well as visual art. Or Book o' Lights," take a look at this. This is the book he's talking about, Or Book o' Lights. It's a book, and here it's a work of art, visual art, and it goes back and forth. Or Book o' Lights ranks among the most imaginative and ambitious visual verbal books of the 1990s. So he's using words like sound poetry, avant-garde. What does it mean to perform in a new way, to write poetry in a new way, to speak poetry, to be a polyartist, to be the person that Alex Caldiero is? And you'll see that in this display. Let me just remind you of Stravinsky's ballet, Rites of Spring. The original choreographer was by Nijinsky, and the audience who gathered for ballet and heard this music and saw this dancing went crazy. There was a riot in Paris in the audience. Or Bertolt Brecht and Kurt Weill's Three-Penny Opera that was performed in Berlin. The audience had come for an opera, and they got this avant-garde work by 2 great artists. I'm saying this because if you haven't seen a performance by Alex Caldiero, you're going to experience something that you've never experienced before. If your mind is open, it will be an extraordinary experience. And I give you Alex Caldiero.
meant to collect dust. Word turd. Stones sleep with eyes open. You are so much on my mind, you have thoughts of your own there. The leaf won't you fall for me? In the deeper, the sweeter. A man's silence and a woman's silence have nothing in common. So much depends on nothing. I enjoy restaurants where the waitresses wear dresses made of the same material as the tablecloths. A collection of habits is what I am. I have to admit, I thought I was more. But that's just a thought in the head. Instead, what I am really is a collection of habits, is what I am. I have to admit, I thought I was more. But that's just a thought in the head. Instead, what I am really is not what I thought, but that's a thought too, in the head, anything can happen, even happiness, thinking without having to know that a collection of habits is what I am. I have to admit, I thought I was more, but that's just a thought in the head. Instead, what I am really is not what I thought, but that's a thought too. In the head, anything can happen, even happiness, thinking without having to know that for you to open on the table the knife, cold, lit, in my head, another thought worth having, even if for an instant it is not what I thought, but that's a thought too. In the head, anything can happen, even happiness, thinking without having to know that for you to open on the table the knife, cold, lit, in my head, another thought worth having, even if for an instant it won't let you just say and see. You would never know by the looks of me that my left hand has been substituted for my right hand and my right hand for my left. You would never guess in a million years that my eyes, my legs, my feet, that everything that comes in pairs has been switched around. Whenever I am near a mirror, I stop and stare. Plain and simple, solitary loaf of bread on the table. And we come in after a whole day outdoors, and Grandma cuts it just right, and it's still warm, and the olive oil seeps into the soft part, which has its own name in the Sicilian language. This inner part, the crust, protects and holds dear, and which we construe as something wonderful because it is good to eat just as it is. Audio biography. Snow. The shaman cowboy always had a cup of coffee for breakfast and a hamburger and fries for lunch. He smoked one cigarette after another, rolling each one in his fingers before lighting up. His drawl was unmistakable when he spoke, and he moseyed when he walked. He said he had been Jesus, Empedocles, and Walt Whitman in previous lives. Once he described how, as Empedocles, he went up and leaped into Mount Etna. As he spoke, the temperature in the room got so hot, and his face so ruddy that I could not take it, and I had to ask him to cut short his story. Other times, if I commented on what a beautiful day it was, or how wonderful the sky looked, he'd respond with, "Thank you," as if I had complimented his handiwork. He taught me how to see through my fingertips and how to break up clouds with my mind, a game I still play now and then. One day, he announced that the chemical composition of his blood was changing, and that once the transformation was complete, he would never die. The day he took off for the holy grounds of Hawaii, he gave away his only possessions. From time to time, I write about him to keep his dear memory alive and to say to him, wherever he may be, that he's part of my life. I miss my computer. Without it, I think and feel differently. I start touch typing on my tongue. I realize how much of what I write is already on the keyboard, waiting for me to unscrabble into words. Now that my computer is gone, its cyclops eye closed and dreamless, all our telepathies disconnected, who's going to look at me with such single vision as the one with the bright blue eye? I keep forgetting. I keep forgetting. I keep forgetting. I keep forgetting. I forgot that I keep forgetting. I keep forgetting. I keep forgetting. I keep forgetting. I forgot that I was writing. I keep forgetting. I keep forgetting. I keep forgetting. I keep forgetting. You would tattoo even my soul if it got skin deep. You would mark my dreams if you could enter my sleep. If we were truly alive, we would know more about living than we do. when he no longer drinks at her breast, when she no longer sips at his mouth, the sun does not come. When he no longer drinks at her source, when she no longer sips at his strength, the mazes grow and grow. When she no longer sings into his hands, when he no longer dreams on her skin, when she no longer swims through his marrow, when he no longer sighs in her wind, the sun does not come, the tree does not stir, the child does not play, the door does not open when he drinks at her breast, when she sips at his mouth. The sun comes when he drinks at her source, when she sips at his strength. The mazes all resolve when she sings into his hand, when he dreams on her skin, when she swims through his marrow, when he sighs in her wind. The sun comes, the tree stirs, the child plays, the door opens. Into each a part of the other, and yet never what it ultimately is. A marginal thing as the self made flesh, more temporal than spatial, linear, apparent, or hidden, reason spirals and flourishes symmetrically. Abundance beyond singles, plainly a voice harks back to first embers. Sensitive tongue, taste, a cloud, her eyes, a cloud, her eyes, a rock-sprinkled field, a cloud, her eyes. Death isn't terrifying, said old Bard Ignatz, himself now dead. What's terrifying is the impossibility of ever touching anyone again. Jesus magic. His mother asked him to get some wine. He didn't understand, so he turned water to wine. His friends asked him who he was. He didn't understand, so he said, I am. His disciples asked him how to feed the crowd. He didn't understand, so he let flow fish and loaves. Pilate asked him What is truth? He didn't understand, so he spoke the silence. Oh, sweet Jesus, don't come back just yet. We don't understand and would only poke your wounds. Y-O-U. 3 letters, 3 chances to say your name. 3 is almost the, which is between you and me, my secret wish to have you. You gone from pronoun to noun because of you. Grammar can't help, no matter how I say it, no matter how I think it. You bring who you won't near you, you send, got you do, come you speak, word you found, arrive you know, high you entrance, Y-O-U. With the right kind of pen, I could write lots of poems. And what's more, poems that are not poems, and poems that will only be poems tomorrow afternoon. You fall into bed, into just the right position when you realize you forgot something, to brush your teeth, to shut the light, or whatever. And you know you gotta get up, but you absolutely don't want to. In such a moment, acknowledge life's essential injustice so you can get some sleep. Seven. According to the charts, this is gonna be your lucky day. 2 and 5 lucky years later, you don't know what's what. 2 plus 5 equals 7. 2 or 7 is the total on the bill, and your hope is rekindled. 7. Come on, 7. Like some Vegas junkie numbers man, superstitious, herding fool. At this point, a bunch of words write themselves, and I just watch them come and go, wait for my cue, and jump in. Go tell that old man he was full of it, him and his charts. Seers are blind when they peer into human hearts. Shamans and shams, rip-offs. It's too big, the human heart. Soul too big for clairvoyance. Chest hurts, it's so big, chest bursts. It's so big, chest rips open. It's so big. make a monkey out of me, take money out of me, shake down. Hear a series of voices interrupt and say things that just don't relate. Too bad I can't have him for dinner. I go to my confessor. Bless me, Father, for I have hoped. Blast me farther than I can cope, or something like that, for here too the voices take off on their own. I'm on a roll, can do no wrong, fill a whole book with written drawings and scrawls, write on bones even, have no worry about my health, in no hurry to doubt my death. Take a chance. Un coup de day, the soup of the day. Ah, 7. Come on, 7. When my tongue meets your tongue, it wants to play tag. It wants to play hide and seek. Then, fatigued, it would lie down in its own moist bed, alone to dream in flavors. Because words resemble human beings, it's no wonder there's no talking to some people. I want to send you many poems, enough to build a new reality, or a world complete with sun and moon and cities where people never have to look for each other. And because I don't trust the post office, I deliver them myself, or use friends or pigeons or to do the job. Poem after poem after poem, all with the same message, always in different words, until finally there were enough to start construction, beginning with a place where you'd be most at home, continuing to build, adding layer after layer of wildflowers, rocks, and herbs, and the rest of it. R, 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 or dummy listens to his ventriloquist and repeats word for word everything he's told to say. Dummy speaks while his constant companion drinks a glass of water. Dummy stares at everybody's mouth. Dummy breathes. Prayer. Lord, don't screw around with the tomatoes. Make them and get it over with. Nobody else can do what you do. After all, you are God. Make them red. This is no time for second thoughts. Don't forget the seeds. This is no time to change the design. Experiment later, which for you is eternity. Don't disappoint your devotees. Round or oval, you know what to do. Don't let the fact that you are omnipotent go to your head. This ain't the time for innovative thinking. The spring is coming, and the gardens are waiting. When the mechanic is through, we can make love again. Thank you.
exhilarated, Alex, and I thank you. I've
You're
never
very
atten-
welcome.
Never attended a performance of yours that didn't thrill me. I've got some questions. And these questions come from the chat from your performance on Tuesday. This was not a question, but somebody asserted this. He's got the best job in the world. He gets up on the stage and he just says whatever comes to mind. I know that's not the case, but would you talk about your choice of poems for the performance today? How did you choose which ones? You've got a great book, big book, and you didn't perform them all.
No, see, what happens is, for instance, each one of these represents a performance.
Ah,
Okay, so what I did was I performed from here to here, these. And they sort of constellate. You know, they kind of begin to group themselves. And here's another performance here. So every one of them is separate and different than the other. I could do what I just did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times and never repeat myself. Like that. So my other books are like that too. They come together, you know, and this is a selection from a bigger selection.
so another question, why did you choose this set? And it's the same question from last time. These are poems.
See, the thing is, as I said with a lot of my stuff, is they kind of grow rather than a choice.
I wondered.
You know, they kind of just suggest, you know, another one, or another one might work with this. And so I keep, like for instance, to prepare for this, these two, and I'm preparing for the one next month. You know, I started about maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and just going through and seeing them grouping themselves, and so it's a very organic kind of living thing. You know, I think the only choice I did here, for instance, today, was that I didn't read one poem because you quoted it.
Oh, the Islander.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, that's the only choice I made,
ah,
where I just passed it up because I had chosen that one.
ah,
But then you chose it, you know, and therefore that was in there already,
ah.
you know. So it's like that. See, in other words, it's not deliberate, but there's a lot of deliberation. You know, there's a lot of, you know what I mean? A lot of.
When we heard the curators of this exhibit talk about your choices and their choices, you all used some of those same words. So which works do you put up? They said you had enough works to fill 10 of these galleries. How
Well,
does...
that's an exaggeration. I would say 8.
So how do you choose? How did they choose? And
By it's like, imagine you're out and you swim out on a surfboard, and you're out and you're waiting for the wave that you think you can ride all the way to shore. And so you wait, right? You wait. No, not that one. You wait. I think this is it. And you ride it. And it's like that. You kind of go through things and then see the one that it can make its way to the wall. You know, it can make itself to the center, to the side. You know, you wait. You know, that's what I would say it is.
so another question. You used a drum today, and on Tuesday you used a Jew's harp or a mouth harp. Would you talk about the choices?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, you know, Since this is a retrospect in many ways, right? I started to deal with poems that were retrospective, you know. So I started with really early poems that I wrote that had to do with, you know, in the early 70s or the 60s, that had to do with Sicily and my beginnings, and therefore opening with a Jaws harp was very logical, you know. And so I talk about, you know, my grandmother's farm, vineyard, you know, and all of that. And so the choice of instruments is like that, you know.
You have several works here that show the image of a Jaws harp.
Yeah, I use that form as it comes up a lot with me because it is sort of a microcosmic emblem of my body.
Huh.
You know, if the way I think of the Jaws harp is that it opens up my body, makes me understand my body. And, you know, when I play it, there's this space here in my head, and then there's this space here in my chest, and then there's another space in my belly. And these three spaces sort of hold sound and hold it in a different way, you know, and sometimes the sound goes from here down, sometimes from up. And for me, the Jaws harp, you know, is an emblem, an instrument to explore that physical kind of breathing,
Yeah.
you know.
And the drum,
Yeah, same thing.
although it's not breath.
Same thing. Well, yes, because it elicits a certain tonal voice of it. You know, the drum is actually projected out. You know, it's actually, again, the body, you know, because before there was drum, this was the first drum right here at hand. So that still always references back to the body, you know, and to that kind of immediate apprehension of yourself as a living being. You know what I mean? Immediate. I am a living being, you know.
I remember a T-shirt you have that says "Meat Tree."
Yeah.
The body and the mind. So Descartes separated those
Yeah,
with a cleaver. But would you talk about body, mind, the
Yeah.
connections?
I think those are two words, like there's two sides to a coin. You know, it's the same coin. You know, but if you're, you know, in the flip called time, you know, sometimes it looks like heads, sometimes it looks like tails, but it's always the same substance, it's always the same essence, it's always the same thing. And the reason why it makes itself manifest in two things, in those specific things, is for fun.
Huh.
You know, it just thickens the plot. You know, it's a gratuitous.
Speaking of fun, some of these things that you performed today were really sensual. And you translated body with the W, body riddles from Sicilian folklore.
Yeah, you know, that's such a beautiful word
It is.
because it has three meanings which sort of hit the whole thing. Because it's body, you know, in the sense of sensuality and the senses and sexuality, eroticism, and it's body as a physical entity, you know, breathing with all these functions. And then there's also body, which is related to Buddha, you know, which is the holy essence of it. And so the body becomes the most erotic thing, becomes the most sacred thing. The most sacred thing, body, body, Buddha, Buddha, body. Body, Dharma, Bodhidharma, as a matter of fact, is the great law of the universe, you know. And so there's this kind of referential of that word that I think has the same root, you know, in bod.
You and I often argue about etymologies. You're a little bit looser in your etymological connections.
You think so?
We could argue again, sure. It's the sound for you that links them.
No, even physically, even though the way you write it.
Yeah. Yeah, what they look like and what they sound like.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Those are deep connections for you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's a slightly different kind of etymology, but a really revealing one. As you connect dissimilar things that have these deep similarities, I think you enter a new realm.
Yeah, if you're lucky, you know.
If you're lucky.
That's what happens. It should be like that. Language should be something that makes us wonder, that opens us, you know, to the inexplicable, that makes us grow, you know, I mean.
When
Yeah.
people ask me what kind of work you do, I often say everything he does is related to language, is an exploration of language. Is that fair?
In one way or another. In one way or another, yeah. But I mean, language, again, in the biggest sense than like French
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
English,
Yeah.
you know, like that.
Maybe the last thing that you performed today is a good example of that. That ended, didn't it, when the mechanic is,
When the mechanic is through, we can make love again.
And I just cracked up hearing that. It's such a wonderful line.
Yeah.
But it came out
Of the mechanical aspect of the whole piece. It's very repetitive.
Show your score.
Kind
I find that score interesting because it's that person who said he can get up and just say whatever comes to mind doesn't understand that there's a score.
There's a score. They don't know the score.
So, so how did you construct this score?
Just as you see it.
Why is there a D and then an A
Yeah,
and then a
yeah.
G?
I can no longer tell you,
Huh,
other than here it is.
huh.
You know, so I could have done it this way, I could have done it that way, but either way, I gotta end up with this,
Yeah,
with this line, which kind of bespeaks where I'm going here, because in the repetitions, in the way things are structured, et cetera, and then I want to be free of that,
huh.
you know, and I want to, in the most plain statement, you know, that once the mechanic is through, once we're through with language, once we're through with the repetitions, once we're through with the predictability, once we're through with the elements that are constructed, there's this incredible ecstatic opening that leads to, you know, everywhere. Yeah.
Somehow, even not having that explanation, that's what I felt and understood as you performed there.
Yeah, and you know, you're right. There is an aspect of humor, of course. There's got to be.
Yeah,
There's got to be, because as I said before, there's, you know, body, Buddha. There's something funny about the way those three things come together.
yeah.
You know, it's just, you know, cosmic. If you look at comic and cosmic, you know, there's such a relationship between, because we live in a funny universe.
Maybe one last thing. This is displayed in this
Yeah, I
exhibition.
performed that.
I know, that's why I wanted to that's why I pulled it off the wall. You performed it with emotions on your face,
Uh-huh.
and this was the text.
Yep.
I thought it'd be interesting for you to talk about the difference between the performing that text and the way this is a different work.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to, but it strikes me as two works overlapping in it,
I think of it better like that.
overlapping,
Two
but
works overlapping.
but
and
also
sometimes-
expanding.
And sometimes impinging on each other, and sometimes defining each other. Because when I first discovered how to do this, you know, I said, well, why did I make those markings? What is that about? Why would I mark this guy's face in such a peculiar way? You know, what is that? And again, it's the body wanting to be included in my life, in one's life, in one's action. The body is not a passive kind of spectator. The body wants to always be engaged in what you're doing. It wants to be a part of who you are. Remember yesterday there was that poem about, you know, the head, you know, wants to assert its own individuality. The hands, you know, they don't want to just mimic the feet. You know, they have a thing they want to do, you know, and sometimes they want to be able to contradict each other, you know. So I began to explore that, and all of a sudden, it was okay. I said, that's what it is. You know, this is not just a drawing anymore, but a drawing in, you know, and a drawing out of more content through those forms, you know. And that's why I keep saying, you know, the body is the only medium I really understand. And they say, you do multimedia. I go, not really. Not really. That's such a superficial way to look at things. You know, yes, yeah, that's wood, that's plaster, that's, you know, paper. If you think medium is that superficial of a thing, yeah, it is multimedia. But if media means that which mediates, that which is in the middle, that which brings you from one thing to another, that which allows you to grow and expand, then medium, only one, the body.
I think that may be a good last word. Thank you for answering the
Yeah,
questions.
you're welcome. Thank you for asking them. Make sure you put that back.
I'm going to put it in my pocket. These things are valuable. And thank you for that extraordinary performance.
You're very welcome.